And we are live here on Dude, What's the Bid, episode 34. My name is Kevin Hill with Brush Pass Research. As always, Casey Larkin is to my right here from Fairlanes. How you doing today, Casey?
Doing well, Kev. Doing well. Recharged batteries over the holidays and pretty stoked on 2025.
Same here. I kind of recharged my batteries too. I'm sitting through the first day of winter here in Dallas, where it's snowing and sleeting. And you know what? This year, I don't even know if it's hit 32 degrees yet until this last little bit where we got the first real cold front coming in, which makes me sit here and say I'm done with winter. I'm done. I'm ready to go outside again. Maybe golf, maybe, I haven't done too much of that lately.
Move on over to Florida.
I guess I should, I'm not ready to retire yet, though. Not ready to retire.
It's not just for snowbirds and retirees anymore, Kev. You got to get with the times, man.
I guess so. So, but yeah, no, I'm excited for 2025. I'm ready to get the year started off right. I think the freight market's going to be a better year. How much better? Who knows? But it's going to be better. Let's just say directionally, it's going to go up. So I'm excited about that. And each day you're alive is good, but each day moving forward is one less day of just a shitty freight market.
True, absolutely. Does still seem. I saw your post, I guess, yesterday that brokers are bleeding the market, huh?
They are. They're leaving the market. So directions, it's kind of leveled off the last 3 months. So kind of still double digit year over year drops in active MC numbers, which I could talk for an hour about active MC numbers and kind of because there's 25,000 and change out there right now. There's only, maybe 3,000 or 4,000. They're doing over like $1 million in annual gross revenue, right? Everybody else is just kind of noise in a lot of ways, right? There's a lot of dormant MC numbers out there that really aren't active. They've never really been active. I'm talking to a few people today, and hopefully next week I'll have some more research about the period between January 2020 to December 2022, which I think is a very interesting time. I just need a little bit more data on it. Because while there's 25,000, so 2019, there's about 17,000 active MC numbers out there. Now there's 25,000.
Mm-hmm.
But in that period of time, from January of 2022 to 2020 to 2022, there were newly issued a little over 25,000 MC numbers, new ones coming off the printing press of people opening up authorities, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So if you take that say 20,000 plus 25,000, we're up to 45, 50,000 at one point of active MC numbers. And that's almost halved, right? So, you do different time frames and data points, and you get some really wild numbers that you can get thrown. So
for sure,
I'm just trying to put that in a little bit more perspective, right?
Right.
So those are all net numbers, right? Net numbers were down this, but like overall, like it's a much bigger number, right? It was we were at FreightWaves at that time, and there was a lot of people selling the dream of freight, right, out in the marketplace. Not our marketplace, but the marketplace, right? Of almost, it became a get rich quick scheme. It's like trading crypto.
Influencers and TikTok. Yeah. It's unbelievable how quickly. I couldn't believe the engagement like the trucking industry was able to generate on TikTok, right? Like.
Oh, I know, right?
When it came out, I was thinking, this is an app that, young kids, chicks in general like to engage with, get their social on. And then I got my hands on Dooner's demographics from some of the TikToks that he was doing. It's like a 90% male audience with, a lot of big companies, big brands watching what was going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was crazy. People were coming in, buying trucks, starting companies. Guys like G-Face out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows how many
some people who got in a little trouble on PPP loans, right? Who are influencers or, trying to say how much money was in freight. And on the broker side, it's like all you need is a computer and a phone, and you go out and make $20,000 a month in commissions and things like that. No experience needed. And I was running Careless at the time and had did a number of sales calls and had a few customers that kind of fit that profile, that they're new entrants to the industry. They paid, a couple $1,000s and done a freight brokerage course. And it was supposed to be easy sailing after that, which we know it's not easy selling, right? You make a really good living, but it's not easy. And so I'm very interested in seeing some of the numbers and putting those together over the next few days.
Yeah. I know our guest is a guy who really, truly understands all the problems headaches, things that may come across.
He does. He's seen a few different. Yeah. He's seen a few different. Go ahead. Sorry, Casey.
No, he's got all the perspective in the world, and he's dealt with his fair share of headaches. We were just talking backstage. He's been in the industry for 45 years. Got his start doing logistics for Ford. It's like 1980, right before deregulation.
Yeah, right before deregulation. He's seen a lot of freight markets. He's been on a lot of different sides, or I think probably every side of the transaction, both as a shipper, carrier, broker. He's just managed freight. We were talking about the old school tools, talked a little bit, about what AI means and foundational knowledge. And he's got a hell of a personal brand as well. You can see him on LinkedIn everywhere. He's the Bodacious Cowboy. It's Jeff Dickinson from RGTX Logistics. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Can't wait to see what this discussion is going to be like today, because there's so much out there, right? And I watch your show, and I know you discuss many different things from cradle to grave. So have at it.
Well, if you've watched the show and you know how it goes, we're all interested on how it's going to go, because none of us have a clue. We're just going to talk, and that's what we do. Give us a little bit about your background, your experience, how you got into logistics, kind of what you've done.
Sure. I did not find logistics. My wife found logistics for me. I had a roofing company back in 79, 80. Had a bunch of guys working for me. I used to work on old Victorian homes with the old Yankee gutters that had like the pool liners. They were wooden gutters, did underground drainage systems and all that. And I was on a roof of a 3-story old Vic, and I was tired, and I was doing some gutter guards, and I stepped on the plastic gutter guards on asphalt shingles, and I went for a ride off the 3-story whatever. Wow. And as I'm going off, I backhand a air vent out of a bathroom, which saved me. That scared the crap out of me. And next thing I knew, I'm selling my business, my truck, all my tools, everything. Now what the hell am I going to do? So I'm talking to my wife, and the way you found jobs back then was newspapers, So I was just going through the newspapers, and, I'm still doing my thing. And she says, hey, I found this job at Krupp's, North America. Now, you probably heard of Krupp's, a German coffee maker. And I went there with no expectations whatsoever. And I started there. I was a forklift driver. I stocked shelves, picked orders, packed goods. Had a very good boss. He was so good that he was my best man in my wedding. So, I mean, I'm very lucky, guys, that I had some really good bosses and leaderships and mentors and coaches and really great constructive disciplinarians. I think in logistics field that everyone needs to get their ass kicked once in a while to face reality, which helps you not just to grow thick skin, but it helps you to create the knowledge that you have over your career and what not to do and what to control and what not to control. And I was thankful. And those guys out there know exactly who they are. And I wouldn't be here today, 45 years later, if it wasn't for those guys, giving me a crutch and a shoulder to lean on when I really needed it.
That's great.
It is.
That's great. So
everybody typically has a circuitous route into the industry, but I guess the headaches of the logistical world are a lot easier to conquer after being a roofer and seeing your life flash before your eyes.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was talking to Kevin earlier, and it was like, we had it hard back then. Everything was a manual environment. We didn't have the tools that we have today. And watching the evolution of logistics and the tools and the technology that evolutionized, what we have today was fascinating to go through that and working with those tools and seeing how they progressed over time. Looking at 60,000 shipments in a manual environment every 3 to 4 months was difficult when you're looking at origin and destination points by mode, by weight, by CWT, by breaking down that and doing cost analysis. You have all those tools to do it today. But when I did it back then, I was telling Kevin, it's no joke. I used to lock myself in a room for 3 days, 72 hours to go through all this stuff to make sense of what was going on, especially when you're trying to balance inventories and get a steady flow throughout the week. When you've got a mass amount of transportation spend and you're trying to reduce cost. And, are we where we need to be today? I don't think so. When you look over the last 45 years from what we had to where we are today, to where we need to be, which is at a far distance, because we have the tools to help us to streamline, to be more efficient, to be more productive, but we still have the problems. I think everybody can agree with that. We still have those problems that need to be uncovered. They still need to be delved into. We're over inundated with tools right now.
We are. And the tools seem to live in silos.
They do. They do. And the tools are more from the outside in than from the inside out, especially from a broker's point of view, where that's where they work from. They work from the outside in to move as much freight as they want, but there's no requirement. There's no mandatory requirement where you must be trained. You must take these courses to become a freight broker. You like Kevin said earlier, before we got out of here, you just take a seat, you're behind there, and you start moving freight. But when you look at practical experience and practical expertise being in the trenches, there's a lot to do on the shipper side that you should know about as a broker than just being a broker and working from that outside. Because everything, all those mechanical mechanisms of logistics that move interior wise has a lot to do with what happens to the exterior and the information shared and what you gain from it and what you don't gain from it if you don't ask the right questions. It's not selling freight automatically. There's much more to moving freight than moving freight itself.
More than what's on the paper, certainly. And this conversation that we had in Kansas City, right? When we first met on a golf course at the Broker Carrier Summit.
Exactly.
we're throwing around, how many, really qualified or good freight brokers are out there. How many freight broker. I was talking about freight brokerages, which is the company, right? Freight brokers, which are the employees, right?
Yes.
How many good qualified ones there were in the industry? There's probably about 150,000 people who are either brokers or carrier salespeople. They're either on the operation side or on the sales side, and how do you separate that? Those it doesn't really matter, I don't think. But how many of those are competent, right? And there's a hard number to really tag in a lot of ways. But I think you can say the same thing about insurance agents or real estate agents, right? How many of lawyers even, right? How many aren't just? It comes down to it doesn't matter, the courses or the education, because when you get in the seat, it's always different. It's always different, and there's a lot of hard decisions, difficult decisions that you have to make, and a lot of those are ethical decisions.
Yes, and I take it from two different perspectives. Not that I have anything against college, because college is good for a couple things, and it's more book smarts than anything compared to street smarts and actually working in the trenches, hitting those toggle switches and making those things happen. You can't learn that from case studies, what's told to you. You give a case, how do you resolve this? Now, you can look at all the books and you can read as much information that you want about a specific topic within the cradle to grave supply chain arena. But it's another thing to actually be playing in those trenches from those cradle to graves and understanding those mechanisms. There's so many of them, and like over my career, I refused to get pigeonholed. I didn't want to get, pigeonholed into one vertical by one mode. That wasn't me. I asked a lot of questions. I wanted to know everything that I possibly could, a little of everything, I should say, from cradle to grave, so that I had a perfect understanding, so that if somebody came up to me and asked me a question or got on a topic, at least I could have an intellectual conversation with them without saying, I don't know. But when I do come across that and I'm like, I don't know. However, I do know a person whose skill level is right in this area. I'm going to introduce you to it, because that's what logistics is about. If you don't have that skill or that understanding or that expertise, reach out to somebody that knows. Network. It's networking, and bring that person into your inner circle. Whoever's not doing that, you're doing it all wrong. Seriously. You're exactly right about that. You're doing it all wrong, and that's the reason why. And it takes focus and discipline and motivation to do that. And I think that's the reason why you see across all industries, right, or all passive life or all tasks, right, you have people who are really good, and then you have average and below average. And the people who are really good at what they do, it's a very small percentage, because they don't have the dedication to actually do that. And I just bring that up because I think logistics is a prime example of that bell curve in life, right? Yeah, I've seen over my career, I've seen some really nasty stuff happen, even death.
Yeah.
When you're working in a warehouse. I've seen people explode, like mentally. I've seen people break down, pull their hair out, quit. It's a tough environment, And when I've worked with the Teamsters, I work with the UAW, and I'll tell you right now, there is no other environment more complex than working with Teamsters, the union, the UAW. I don't care who you are. You haven't seen shit until you actually worked with them. whole different type of structure. You know, you just can't do the things that you want to do. You've got to get that buy-in from many different people and become one of them when you're not one of them. You know, there's, of course, you got anti-union, you've got pro-union and all that, but then you've got that middle line where you can agree to disagree and still be friends and still get shit done over a period of time. You know, when you have that big ego and you don't want to listen to other people or kind of take that, you know, as, hey, you know, that might work kind of idea, you're done. You're finished. You're just done. You know, when you work in logistics, every day you have to learn something new and you have to listen. But the key to listening is listening with intent. The intent to learn something new that will help you to move your career forward. If you're not doing that, you're going to get left behind really quick.
Very quick. Very quick. Yeah. And you have to do it. And you go back to the decisions you make. The decisions you have to make on a daily basis, they are difficult decisions, right? You have a lot of people's goods in your hands. You have their lives in your hands. You have, it's difficult. They're difficult decisions that you have to make, and calls that you have to make about what to do, and you better be good at it, or you're really going to cause a lot of problems with other people's lives.
Oh, definitely, and definitely with yourself as well. You know, and I'm the first one, and my honesty, integrity, you know, and my transparency is first and foremost in all the transaction and business that I do. And, you know, when I say this wholeheartedly, but I sucked as a dad. You know, that's tough for me to say and for people to understand that. But logistics, when I was saying it could eat you up and spit you out, my focus was totally on business and not that much on family. And I missed out on a lot of things because there was a lot of demands, especially in some of the areas where you sacrifice much of your life, you know, to give to a project, you know, to a goal, to an objective that has a timeline that's absolutely, you know, etched in stone that must be met. There's no damn excuses whatsoever. And you have to do that. You know, logistics is about sacrifice. True. It's about sacrifice. I'm not willing to do that now. I've learned, you know, over the last 20 years, I've learned to get that balance, you know, because it's very important. I mean, at one time, you know, I sucked as a delegator because I didn't believe that no one could do it better than myself, which is very destructive. My blood pressure was 210 over 130. I was ready to freaking explode until I thought about it. And I just said, you know what, I'm not going to give a shit. And when I said that, I didn't mean it in a mean way. I meant in a very good way, being that I'm going to teach myself to control the controllables. Everything else that I cannot control, I'm going to push that by the wayside because that's not a priority in my life.
Yeah.
And when I did that, my blood pressure dropped, and you know, I've been good for the last 25 years. I mean, knock on wood. But if you're not careful, it's going to catch you. And it's going to beat the shit out of you like you would not believe.
Yeah, it will, especially in logistics. If you spend any time thinking about things you can't control and worrying about things that you can't control, it's going to eat you alive. I think in any life it is, but certainly in logistics, because as a broker, you don't really control anything, which makes it another part of the difficult jobs, right? If you're out selling a product, right, the product, for the most part, is either good or bad, right? It's going to have some flaws to it, and there's going to be something that's wrong. But if it needs to be improved, the company can improve it, right? If you're selling, you know, insurance, you know, the insurance contract's the insurance contract. You know, there's not much to be said about it. But as a broker, right, you are, you know, taking shipments from a shipper, and you're hiring a truck to move it, and you're sitting usually in an office doing that. So that whole process is kind of out of your control.
That's where I'm different.
Yeah.
See, like you have,
I mean, not the entire process, but the physical parts of it, right?
Right.
You know,
That physical part, I'll agree with you that, you know, there's the non-controllables and then there's the controllables.
Sure.
So when you're a broker, you have the non-controllables in most cases because you don't own that freight. Because it's here today and it's gone tomorrow, you're filling a void. That's what a typical broker does when they're brokering shipments where you have overflow and there's no you got dedicated freight, and now the carrier's over capacity, and now they're going to field it out to their brokerage division, or they're going to reach out to a broker to fill that void so shipments can go. I'm pure dedicated. I have the control. I have the ownership. That's the control, which makes my life easier. I like to work smarter, not harder, to do more in less time. You know,
and part of that equation is something you have a control over as a person, right? What business you do, how you set yourself up.
Correct.
To do business, right? Because I always talk about, and I always have, that transactional lifestyle, right? If everything you do is on transactional loads and spot markets, you're going to get all of those problems that come with it, and you'll never get out of it. But if you set yourself up and do the things necessary that you're in control of to set up a business and book a business that is more dedicated, right? Then right, you know, and I'm sorry,
and you can last 45
years. You can continue on your thought. I just interrupted your train of thought so I could interject my mindless stuff. But you know what you were saying, right? You set it up towards dedicated, so you have more control of things that you can't control.
Well, it's not just that, but now you're minimizing risk, right? 45 years, I have not faced double brokering. I have not had one load lifted, right? And I haven't had any fraudulent activity. How many can say that? All right, because I dive into it. You know, I'm partners with Freight Validate. Dale Prax is a very good friend of mine. I love his tool and stuff like that. Because I was able to vet these carriers before we had the tools, before what Dale created out there, you know, and I did it in a manual environment. So I took that with me, you know, and that's how you control and minimize your problems, you know, when you're dedicated. A lot of people don't want to do that. That's fine. You know, that's my honey hole, you know, drop and hook, multi-stop, you know, enterprise shippers, because that's where I came from. You know, I love big stuff. I like complexity. I live and swim in that shit, you know, and did it for many, many years. So it's not that complex to me when things come up, because there's many different questions that you have to ask that a lot of other brokers don't know what to ask, you know, to find out those things. Because let's face it, you know, there's a lot of untruthfulness in the industry, and a lot of people, shippers, you know, brokers, they don't tell the whole story about a shipment, you know, which causes problems, you know, and, you know, I look at it from a shipper's perspective because I was there and I did that, you know, and that's why, you know, I'm not afraid to say this. I hated brokers, and that's why I became one, where I switched to an STLSP, which is shipper turn logistics service provider, because every time I got called, and I have a lot of friends who are still shippers that still have the same problems, that are still facing the same approaches, that, hey, I got the best rates, I got guarantees, and I got packaging in hand. You know, that's like the approach 90% of the time. You know, you got to approach these shippers with a different approach, you know, by asking about their business, by knowing about their business before you make the phone calls. Quality over quantity of calls made. That's the way I look at it. And listen, when you're dealing with a small shipper, Kevin, right? They're not rocket scientists. They don't know a whole hell of a lot. You know, when you're in that 50, and I don't mean to be mean, but I know the responsibilities in that freaking role. Yeah. And when you start going up the ladder and you get into the $50 to $100 million transportation spends, these logistics managers and supply chain managers are like rocket scientists. They can pull shit out of a basket faster than than anybody out there. They know when you're bullshitting, So
Yep.
you have to be tactful. You have to get on their thought process in order to open up that door to have a shot at moving something because you understand it. That's why I always say, and I preach that in a lot of my content and my posts, is that before you make a call, do some research on whom you are speaking to and learn about their business, where they do it, why they do it, what kind of products they have. Does it fall into your niche? Is it your wheelhouse? Is it your mode? A lot of brokers out there fail to do that. And that comes with the lack of training. I don't care what anybody says out there. You know it as well as I. We've had that conversation in the golf court where we're like, they're there to fill a seat. If they're good, fine. If not, we'll eat them up, spit them out, and have them sign a non-compete and ruin their lives for about 2 or 3 years. It's bogus. I'd never do that to a person. I would never rake a shipper over the coals because I was a shipper. I know what that's like. And if you're a rocket scientist and you understand it, not saying that I am, right? You'll know when you're getting raked. If you get screwed one time, those rocket scientists remember your name. Remember, there's 3 key things here, guys. You've got your brand, your image, and your reputation at stake. If you come across the wrong way, that brand's going to get tarnished, your image is going to get trashed, and your reputation is out the window. And every place that you go and you use your name, if you go back to that prospect and you make a phone call, they're not stupid. They're going to remember, oh, weren't you with, I remember talking to, no, not interested, So always think about that in the back of your mind when you're talking to a prospect or a client and you're looking for referrals and all that kind of stuff. Brand, image, and reputation. How do you sell that? And can you get a testament to what you're talking about? It's that golden ball, if you will, that's just filled with golden eggs. It's that basket. You have to create it for yourself and know what you're talking about before you start pursuing something, but learn it first. If there's a big, huge takeaway from this show, man, learn every single day, learn your prospects, learn whom you're talking to, do background checks. Don't think about the 100 calls they have to do a day. It's ridiculous. I did an analysis, a real quick analysis when I opened up a brokerage, a company for Total Logistics. I worked there for 7 years. And if you do 50 calls a day, okay, that's 250 a week, 1,000 a month, 3,000 a quarter. If you do things right, it takes 7 minutes for each call. Where you're making that phone call, you're taking notes and you're writing that into your CRM. So if you take 7 minutes times 3,000 calls, 21,000 minutes. Okay, think of that, 21,000 minutes. After you make 3,000 calls, about 6% of them you'll qualify, 180 out of the 3,000 calls that you make. Out of the what's that?
It sounds like a nightmare.
Right? So out of the 180 qualifiers, because you have no idea if they're $100,000, $500,000, a $60 million one, you don't know because you didn't do any background checks. You're just dialing for dollars. So you get 180 of that, about 2% of that, or 3.6 of the prospects that you made those phone calls, you possibly might land, right? So those 3.6 prospects, you might have a $50,000 a year annual spend. You might get lucky, hit a 500,000, and you might have another one at $1 million. So that's $1,550,000, right? And you spent 21,000 minutes or 3 months to land 1.55, right? Now, my philosophy and the way that I look at things, just the way my brain works, is that if I take those 21,000 minutes and I said, I'm going to pick the top 10 prospects that I absolutely want in my pipeline, I am going to research the shit out of all of them. And if I land one and say my bucket is 10 million to 75 million, and I hit one, after really diving into it, I'm pretty good. So
Pretty good.
That's where I say that's time well spent. I'm not in the business to the dial for dollars, because I know what that feels like on the reception side as a shipper, and I know what shippers go through, and that's why I think differently. Everything I do, I think as a shipper.
It's always good practice, I think, to put yourself in the customer's shoes, right? No matter what industry you're in.
That comes from experience and understanding, the do's and don'ts and what they like and what they dislike, and that's feeling them out and having those conversations. It's like John Rogers. Everybody knows John Rogers. So I'll just mention him real quickly. Every place that the gentleman goes, he has a business card and he tells them exactly what he does. And at the same time, he finds out exactly what they do, where they do it, why they do it. He's a unique gentleman. I appreciate John. And, I just think that's a good way of doing it. But I will not work around the clock. You don't. But
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea to think about activity as, sometimes it can be confused as the end all be all for KPIs related to sales management, right? You make your 50 calls and that's your target and you get to go home for the day. They've got some other cool systems. I remember a former colleague of mine, his wife in Chattanooga, worked at a company called Ambition, which is like gamifying activity. And you can set it up to have different weights for different types of activities, right? I mean, I think the goal at the end of the day is to have really qualified calls with customers and to turn them into business. It's not necessarily to make 50 or 100 calls or send the right amount of emails. It's really hard to develop that book of business, doing it the right way, doing the research on these folks, having the conversations. But in my experience, I wasn't selling freight, I was selling ads and things like that. But it's really worth it because you develop these relationships, and if you're honest with them, honest with yourself, maybe you can't sell them something today, but maybe a year from now or 18 months from now, you can sell them something, and you know enough about them, and you've got enough space with that person to loop back around, send them that email, give them that call, and get the answer that you're looking for. But
yeah,
to kind of pivot, right? If you've been doing things from just a spray and pray method, etc. So, anywho, it's my
and that's one of the reasons I know there's a void in there because I'm pro carrier. I am pro broker if they're good ones, and definitely pro shipper. It's a triangulation. I always try to make a win-win situation. The biggest void is information sharing, and that's why I'm in the developmental stage of my new app called AccurateShipper.info, and it's a checklist. When I talk about transparency, I really mean it, because I don't hide anything, because it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for the service provider, the shipper, or the broker. It's 126 checkpoint list. That when that person comes on board, that shipper, they fill out this document, and it's highly detailed. When they fill out that document, as soon as they do that on the onboard process, that gets sent directly to the carrier, directly to the broker. And if they don't deal with the broker, it would go shipper, carrier directly. Yeah, there's a fee in doing that, but it's all transparent. You've got it in writing exactly the way that their operations work and what you can expect when you go on site if you're a carrier, and what door to go into, who to talk to. I mean, I could spend an hour listing everything that I have in there, because I think there's a huge void in that. And that's why you have a lot of problems out there with misinformation being shared. in order to pull the wolves over somebody's eyes, thinking that it's something, but it's actually something else. Now you got something to fall back on to hold them responsible. And then it goes into, when you've got detention and all other different accessorials. Here's what it is. Here's what we agreed to. Here's the cutoff time. I mean, everything that you can imagine is in this thing. And, I want to get it out by March. I've been working on it a lot. I still got a little bit more to do on that, but I think it's going to help out the industry a lot where, it'll stop the BS, because there's a lot of BS out there, and when carriers work with me, all my clients have been on board with me 3 to 4 years. That must say something. All the carriers that have been in my corral who have worked for me have been on board that time, because they know the way I work. I treat them well, I take care of them. They take care of me. It's hand in hand, man. That's how the industry works. I got nothing to hide. They have nothing to hide. They know what's expected and all that kind of stuff. Listen, I give equal opportunity to service providers and carriers to fire themselves. I do not fire carriers or service providers. If they sign something and say that, yes, we understand the requirements and the execution that's needed in order to support this, this account, fine. You said it, not me. You agreed to it. Do it. That's it. You'll hold me accountable. I'll hold you accountable. That's the way that the industry should be run, the way I look at it.
That is the way you should look at it. And it sounds like the app you're developing, it goes along with your theme a little bit of de-risking, right? Because that is a tool to take more control, to be able to take more control under yourself, right? Which if you can control things, then you can de-risk it, right? Unless you're trying to control things you can't control, and then
that's when you're
introducing risk.
Yeah, that's when you're going to lose big time, when you're going outside into areas that you don't belong into, and you think that you can do something, and you're not tagging the people, like yourself, and what you do, what I don't do. And if there's something that comes up where it's like, hey, do you do this? No, but I know somebody that could definitely help you out in this area. I'm not going to bullshit you and say, yeah, I'll do it just to get the account on board. And then when it comes time to pulling the trigger to getting the shit done, no.
and that's that goes back to the conversation of good brokerages, good carriers, good shippers, right? And not good brokers, carriers, and shippers, because you can put you have parties of all three of the parties are in those two different buckets.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Man, oh man. No, that's a good. So you're looking at a March launch.
Yeah, looking at around March.
At least a MVP, a March MVP out.
Yeah, and I like tools. Listen. Yeah, I'm old school, but I'm an old school guy that loves technology and learns to learn, and I go with the flow. There's a lot of guys that are my age, maybe a little bit younger, that don't accept technology for what it is, and they work against it. Wrong, guys. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you plan on working further in this industry, get your ass off your chair, get yourself, on the internet, start looking up these tools, learn AI, learn all this kind of stuff, because that's the way the world is moving in. And you've got to use your experience and your background knowledge and then gain new technology to back that up. And now you got the full package to offer. Yeah. Don't cut yourself short, because if you do that, you're going to lose. I can tell you firsthand, I would not be here where I am today if I didn't have the right mentors, the coaches, very strong disciplinarians, and the willingness to get certified, to learn, to gain that knowledge in order for my career to keep moving forward. Yes, I had problems in my career. It wasn't peachy and creamy and all that kind of stuff. We all have that. It's what you do with failure that's going to create and make you a better person in the long run than refusing to learn from that failure. There's many steps to take. It's just not taking that leap of faith and thinking everything is going to work out the way you want it to. Much more involved, guys. Much more involved.
It is. Well, Jeff, the Bodacious Cowboy, thanks for your time today.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back, man. Great talking with you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And what podcast? What was the name of your podcast again? That you do?
It's the Storytelling. Yep, I got two of them. I got the Storytelling Chronicles, Powering Women into the Logistics. We got a big thing that we're going to put out there. Be on the outlook for it. We got a Empowering Women into Logistics award that we're going to award one woman out there with a sizable amount of money. And if you want to learn more about that, follow me. You'll see the post out there. Both Christy Knitchell and I are putting this together. We're going to continue the Storytelling Chronicles, Empowering Women into Logistics podcast this year. We're setting up a new guest and all of that. So you can follow that up. And then also, John Brewer and I also have this Old Dog House Logistics podcast. It's a bunch of old dogs like ourselves that are just chumming it up and having a chat about the old times, what we went through. John is a shipper and I'm a broker, and I have no intentions on doing business with him because he's in the food business and I'm not. And I hate Wakefern and CS Wholesale. So no, I will not do that. A man's got to know his limitations, and I know mine. If I want to do business with them, because I do have food certification, I could, but I don't. That's just no. Thank you.
Yeah.
But you can follow us. We're gonna have a good show. We're also going to have a few people join us on specific topics that you want to watch. But follow me. You can look me up, Jeff Dickinson, or the Bodacious Cowboy. Everybody knows me, and we always have a good show, and we're always trying to get contact out. I'm at that point now to give back. I like to share. So
cool. I'm glad. And I will see you. If I don't see you before then, I'll see you in Indianapolis.
Sir.
I think April 27th or 28th to May 2nd, the Broker Carrier Summit. So excited for that.
Sir. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, my friend. I appreciate you. Thanks, Casey.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Bring back the Fu Manchu for us, will you?
Oh, that's easy. All I have to do is just cut this out, take this out, man, and I'm right there. I just shaved last night too, so I mean, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I wouldn't doubt it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Great chat.
Yeah, have a great weekend, guys. Thanks.
You too.
You too.
Well, Casey, this is a good way to start out 2025 for you.
Wonderful way. What a character. I love it.
I know he's a good dude. The first time I met him was back in April in Kansas City at the Broker Carrier Summit. We were partnered up to play golf, so we got to spend a day together, and it was great. It was great fun.
Yeah, seemed like an awesome conference. I was playing golf with Wasim Munayer recently. I guess he was the champion of the Hackers Day Invitational or whatever the golf tournament is you guys put on there. Yeah. But yeah, very cool. Great stuff. I think it's interesting, right? The more we talk to people, I've seen some more posts to this effect as well today. What separates the wheat from the chaff is it's not the technology, right? It's not the brand. Yeah. It's the people that you have, giving them the right tools and things they need to be successful.
It really is. Cool. Well, I think this is going to wrap it up for this week, and we'll be back next week, Thursday, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern, to talk the freight market a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a couple ideas on guests, so
good.
Take that offline and Yeah, it should be a good one.
Cool. Until then, see you guys later.
See ya.